It is Sunday morning, and we are protecting military families on 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk. And as always, we are along with Chris Brochu, owner of Brochu Law. Chris, how are you this morning?
Casey, good morning. I'm doing well.
Glad to hear it. We talked a lot last week with Adam about military housing and things of that nature. We're going to keep that rolling this week as well. We have Amanda joining us. We will talk to her in just a quick second. But Chris, you know how it is. We start the show. We let the people know that might need your help. Your second opinion, what you do for military families. Tell the people, how they can get in contact with you if they might need your help.
Thank you, Casey. And Amanda, good morning. Welcome. So as you all know, you've heard it by now, and if you're new to the show, if your loved one has a life insurance policy, maybe it's one that's already at issue, maybe it's one that they've been paying premiums for that you're having trouble with. If you submit a death benefit, a beneficiary claim form or a death certificate, and you don't have a check for the proceeds within 30 days, red flag, red flag, red flag. You need to do something. Time is of the essence. Call an attorney, ask around, talk about your legal rights. Here's a little life insurance for you this morning that you may or may not have known. And then the military second opinion. Any military family that gives us a call, we're going to take a review. What sort of military benefits do they have at issue? And are they maximizing those? If they're leaving anything on the table, or maybe there's a legal right that they have that maybe they didn't know about, we're going to explore those with them. And if we both decide that moving forward is something that we want to do to either go after some of those benefits or a legal right, we'll enter into a fee agreement. There's no fee unless we win. We always advance all costs on behalf of military families and civilian families. With all of that being said, Amanda is going to be the part 2 of Adam's show. Amanda, you're with the same office as Adam?
Yes, I am, Chris. Hello and good morning.
Good morning. And can you tell us a bit, so where is your office? I know that there are a lot of Keller Williams out there. We want to be super specific. So this is, again, a military legal talk show. So we only bring on military businesses and legal professionals that support our military, that are companies we believe in. Absolutely. So tell us about your military branch at Keller Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. So Keller Williams as an entire company has now created a military segment, and we've actually brought on Levi, who is running this entire division to bring together military families and figure out how we at Keller Williams can best serve them as they're dealing with the transition of how difficult it can be as a military family having to buy or sell real estate. So on our local level, we are Keller Williams Atlantic Partners. We're located over on Southside near Tapestry Park, very close to the town center. But we actually have kind of the whole coast here. We run from Amelia Island all the way down to Daytona. And we have a military professional in each one of our offices who really hyper-focus on helping military families.
So if you had somebody that was in Interlachen or Palm Coast, or somebody at NAS Jax or Mayport that needed help buying or selling real estate, they can still call your team and you guys can help them out?
Anywhere in the country we can help them out. We can locate a professional who has that military designation and understands at a high level how to work with those military families.
So we could have someone moving from Fort Drum, New York, or somebody from the West Coast. They could call you and say, hey, I need someone in this new part of the country that I'm moving to, or maybe I'm moving to Northeast Florida.
Hawaii, Alaska, wherever you want to go, we've got someone who can help you.
All right. I think I'd probably rather go to Hawaii than Alaska, but I know that, so Adam and I talked about this last week, but there's sort of this stigma, I think, with some of the loans, right? So if you're selling your house in Northeast Florida, I think everybody's got in their mind, like, I want an all-cash offer from an investor, right? No appraisal, no inspection, right? It's super great, but can you tell me why, turning Jacksonville into an all-rental market may not be so good for our community? Like, what effects is that having on our military?
Well, first off, I'll say everyone loves a shiny object, right? So when you're told all-cash offer, 5-day close, that's the least stressful situation you can think of, really, right? But that's not the truth, because when we look at Jacksonville as a whole, a reason that a lot of people came here was we were this large city with a small town feel. And we just don't have that anymore. And now we have investors coming in, buying up entire communities, like new construction communities. That affects the entire ecosystem of what made Jacksonville, what I've like to say, a family-friendly Miami Beach almost, right? And that's really what we're kind of growing into at this point. So I think that just in general, it's all these cash investors coming in are hurting the military family of having the opportunity of purchasing a home. But what I think that comes down to is the education of our sellers and understanding that that shiny object isn't always what it seems.
So by selling, if you're a military family, by selling to another military family, you may be getting not only the same amount of money or value for your home. But now instead of selling it to that out-of-state investor who doesn't really care about the fabric of our community, you're selling it to the next military family that's moving here?
Well, they don't. Not only do they not care about the fabric of our community, but when a landlord owns a home, they don't pour as much love and attention into it. That affects our neighborhood values. That affects everything. So when a military family sells to another military family, you protect the neighborhood, you protect just that neighborhood in general, but most importantly, you protect our market and what makes Jacksonville such a great place to live.
Because and you all are the experts, you and Adam. I'm thinking in my mind, a lot of our communities around the bases are where a lot of military families live, and their neighborhoods are probably made up of other service members or veterans.
Yeah.
So they don't want necessarily somebody buying next door to them that's not going to be living there.
Well,
right?
that, and it's what you and Adam talked about last week, that the rents are so much higher for the military family, so it's a lot harder for them to rent rather than buy. So now you're stretching their pockets, you're putting more stress on them, so really it's a lose-lose all the way around.
And I remember Adam talking last week. He said that the overall Jacksonville rental market's around $2,000 a month.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
And I think Adam said that the military's allowance for housing was somewhere just over $1,800 a month.
Yep.
So meaning it would technically, or correct me if I'm wrong, be maybe more difficult to rent here than buy here?
Yes. The only caveat I'm going to say is when you're purchasing in this market, because we do have limited inventory, patience is involved, right? And working with a professional is involved. So I don't want to set any false expectations, but it's just as difficult to rent as it is to buy. So if you're going to make a decision, you might as well end up with an investment at the end of it.
And it makes sense. And what types of things could, if somebody is going to say, you know what, I would like to become a buyer, even if it's a military first-time home buyer, what sorts of things would they do, to call you guys? What are some of the first steps that they would do to start that process?
Yep. So the very first thing you want to do is make sure that you're connected with a professional who understands today's real estate market and actually does full-time business. You got a lot of agents who are hobbyists, and at Keller Williams, we really focus on growing our agents to CEOs. They are business owners. They don't just sell real estate, right? Because real estate is so much more than opening a door. I think one of the things you guys talked about last week was even looking at our closing disclosures and understanding the different fees and whatnot. So making sure that you're partnering with a professional who really understands the market and how to win in today's market, because it's not just about the highest price, right? There's other things like contingencies and working with the appraisal. So it's finding someone who can get really creative with that offer and best present it for you. So I think it's finding who you want to partner with first.
Do you find that in this market, because there are so many houses that are, fighting for offers, right? You see it, hey, we've got 7 offers in 48 hours. Do you find that sometimes that there aren't like what are some of the things as a military office that represents military family? I mean, you all are hyper focused on our military as opposed to somebody who's a hobbyist, right? They sell 1 or 2 a year, and they don't really care who their
Correct.
buyer or seller is.
Right. Absolutely. So what I will say is, yes, in each of our offices, we have groups that focus mainly on military, similar to Adam. So in each one of our offices, we have someone who has had the experience and knows how to help navigate that.
And are there any buyers or sellers that you encounter that are hesitant to accept a VA loan or work with the VA?
Yeah, I think there's a huge misconception about VA loans because there's a lot of uneducated agents out there, unfortunately, right? That's why the research of who you work with is so important. The problem with the VA loan for the average consumer is they think that going through the VA process of the appraisal and the repairs is what's going to be difficult. If it is a good, solid home and you don't have WDO issues, wood-destroying organisms, so no rotting wood, any of those things, if you've got your blinds, if you have good life on your roof, your HVAC, your electric, as long as all of that is updated, you're not going to have an issue with the VA. The only time that a VA loan could potentially, I'm going to say in quotations, hinder a seller is if it's not a solid property. If it's got a bunch of issues, if everything is outdated, then it's probably best for an investor anyways. The VA just wants to make sure that their veterans and active service members get into a home that is solid, which I think they deserve 100%. So the misconception is agents will go out there and say, don't worry about VA. You don't want to accept those. It's going to be a lot harder to get through the process, but that couldn't be any further from the truth. If you have a VA loan that's the borrower is putting $0 down. Sometimes a VA buyer actually can get cash back at closing. So
Wow.
What the seller doesn't understand is this is a 100% going to close. 99.9% going to close.
So if
right?
we get it to, the inspection and the appraisal.
If you get to the if you get to the appraisal 100%, you're closing. There's not going to be a problem whatsoever.
Okay. And I think that is one of the things that the VA does so great is they do provide opportunities. And Adam talked about it. If you're 25 years old or under and you don't have 20% to put down, if you're not in the military, you're having a pretty difficult time buying real estate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we can spread that information and our sailors and service members that are buying their first home and they're under 25 and sort of break that stigma of, hey, you could get into your first house, no money down, potential cash back at closing. That seems pretty reasonable to me.
Absolutely. But I think, you had mentioned earlier, what is something that they need to do to make sure that they're talking with someone who can help them that? When you're interviewing real estate agents, go ahead and ask them, how do you feel about VA loans? And you'll see it immediately. They're either going to be like, oh, that's awesome, or be like, I have a creative way to make sure your offer gets accepted.
Okay. So it's like what I do. If somebody calls me and I say, well, where did you hear about this denial, or why did this firm deny your case if you're trying to sue for life insurance proceeds or something like that? A lot of times it's not necessarily that the lawyer or law firm doesn't want the case. It's that they don't even realize what they're working with, and therefore it just goes in that trash bin of, hey, we don't take those types. Is that similar to real estate in that most people that are agents that maybe have only dealt with, the investor or the certain types of conventional loans, they really are trying to stay away from some of these other loan products?
It's only because they're uneducated. Like 100%, that is the thing. And that's not even fully on them. If you're not working with military, then how could you be educated on that VA loan? So it's really up to that agent to go out there and understand how it's a benefit to their seller and to their buyer to utilize that loan.
So ideally then, if you've got a service member, a military family, a veteran living in Northeast Florida specifically, they want to contact somebody like Adam and his team, so that way they know somebody that knows VA loans. Their team are active duty service members or veterans that have probably used VA loans to purchase a home, right? I mean, does it get any better than that? Somebody that is not only aware of it, but has used the product and knows how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. That, and then the amount of transactions simply that our office does, and the information we give back to our agents of what we see as we're going through these VA transactions. So I think it's having the experience and then being a part of an office that actually shares some of their battle scars, right? Because that's where you really get the education.
And you all have a very large office on Southside, a lot of agents, right? How many agents do you
187.
108, wow. And one of the things that always, intrigues me is I'm driving down the road, and in between, for every 10 billboards, 9 of them are legal. But occasionally you'll come across one that says, like, call us and we'll give you your best offer, right? Or your top offer. Or, hey, give us a call and we'll give you an offer on your home today. And you see them on, I'm sure my phone's listening right now. I'm sure I'll get one of these after. Can you tell me, I mean, what is it that those companies do? Do you all do that? How do we distinguish between a good company and a bad one? How do we know that somebody's getting pennies on the dollar when they should be getting full value? And what are some of the red flags if one of those companies is pressuring you to sell?
So I think it comes back to that shiny object we talked about earlier. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And a lot of these investors, what they bank on is pressure. They want you to sign on the dotted line right now, and they don't want you to do any research. But let me tell you, if they're offering you a cash offer, they will come back. So if you feel any pressure whatsoever, that is your first red flag, red flag, red flag.
All right, listener,
right?
Good.
There you go, right? So that's the thing, is that you need to really understand this is your largest financial investment in a market that is growing rapidly. We are one of 4 protected markets in the country right now. So by selling your home to an investor like that, your main benefit is how quickly it can happen. But you lose the opportunity of the multiple offers that we are experiencing in today's market. Now, something I want to set an expectation on is multiple offers have slowed down a little bit, but there is nothing wrong with that because 40 plus offers on a home is insane anyways, right?
Yeah, that's kind of hard to even wrap your head around, right? I mean, you're trying to figure out, okay, is this extra $2,000 worth it, right?
Go ahead and put it into a spreadsheet and try to explain it to a seller.
My head's already spinning.
Right. So that's the thing, is I know that can seem overwhelming, but when you go directly to an investor, you lose out on the equity that you have gained in that home. Now, if moving quickly is exactly what you need and that's what you want to happen, that's fine. But the truth is you can go talk to an agent who could probably put it on the market for you anyways, still get you that offer, get you into a multiple offer situation, and net you more money at the end of the day. So it's a disservice to you and your largest financial investment for most people to not at least talk to an agent and get a comparative market analysis done on your home to know what today's market value is. Then from there, you can decide, does it make sense to sell it for $100,000 less to get it sold in 5 days?
So do you, and again, I don't mean to put some of these companies on the billboards on blast, but do you actually think that if they offered fair market value, they could afford, if they got 100 calls, could they actually afford to pay fair market value on?
Of course not. What they're doing is they are seeking those who need help.
Okay. So it's more so, hey, how do we get our foot in the door and make that interaction?
Yep.
The opposite of, hey, just pick up the phone and cold call, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? So that makes sense. You get a comparative market analysis, and that way okay, if I want to go with that first offer from that, hey, we'll give you an offer on your home, I can, but at least now I know what an agent could get me, right?
Well,
or what my home might be valued at.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other things people say is, I don't want to pay all the fees. Let me assure you that those companies who have the money to advertise on billboards, those fees are wrapped up in lots of different ways. Processing fees, paperwork fees, we had to talk to you fees, we answered the phone fees. And you just don't realize how it ends up being, instead of the 6% that you paid your agent, you're actually paying closer to 15 to 18% at the end of the transaction.
Okay, and then now I'm thinking to myself, okay, my brain is going to the next group of sellers that are probably saying, well, the market's so great, what do I need a realtor for? What can you tell me why selling your home without a real estate agent is a bad idea? Or again, maybe you should explore your other options while you're doing that.
I don't ever want to push someone into using an agent, because the thing that I do believe, there's a lot of different ways depending on your specific situation on how you can sell your home. What I do know is I wouldn't go into a courtroom without an attorney because I don't know the laws. And a lot of sellers think it's just a contract, it's very simple, but let me assure you, the title process, if that person has a lender, right, and all the different hoops that you have to jump through, understanding how to go through the repair process, how to work the appraisal, all of these are intricate things that I think for a long time the real estate agent has kind of kept behind the scenes, hoping the consumer would just, don't worry, we don't want you to stress. But what that's really done to our industry is people don't understand how much legalities, how many contracts, how much paperwork there really is behind the scenes. So I think what the common seller doesn't understand is the amount of stress you're going to take on, the amount of time it's going to take you, and the laws that are required between actually writing the contract to getting you to closing. It is so much easier for you to just allow a professional to help walk you through that so that you can worry about the stresses of actually moving.
Right. And some people may think, well, I could hire an attorney to do, maybe the document. But I think what scares me is that the people that are listing their home for sale by owner, they may think that, okay, the other party is going to be unrepresented as well, but that's just not the case, right? I mean, if you have an investor, they're sophisticated at buying and selling. They're not coming there alone. No. You don't see, Joe Investor showing up and handing cash. They've got their agents all over the country, right?
Absolutely. Their agents, their attorneys, yes, they've got people who are protecting them, and that's the problem. That's who the investors really are predatory on, because they know that they're uneducated.
And uneducated, folks, doesn't necessarily mean dumb. It means you just don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, I don't know real estate like you and Adam do. There's no way that somebody would know that unless they were either in the industry or liked reading about it, right?
Absolutely.
Or they had some educational background. Yeah,
I've trained 200 plus agents at this point, and everything from a server to a cancer research scientist, and every single person that walked in there with zero education on real estate, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think people think they know about real estate because there's a lot of memes on Facebook and stuff, but the truth is the media, Facebook, they can't talk to you about what's happening in our hyper-local market. And that's the other thing, is that when for sale by owners place their homes on the market, they're looking at past sales. They're not looking at what's happening today, right? So really they do themselves a disservice, because when it sits on the market, buyers start to think, what's wrong with this? They're not reaching national buyers, first off, which is something we do as a company, make sure that we are marketing to every possible person, which is where most of our buyers are coming from. But they end up then sitting on the market, and then their home loses value day by day, and then they end up listing with an agent anyways, and they didn't get to where they needed to be in the time frame, or now they're pressured and they've got to do a cash sale and get it closed a lot quicker, but not maximize their investment.
And so it almost seems like just to get up to that first initial threshold, you should have some real estate knowledge and background and be at least speaking with an agent. But particularly if you're a military family, you need to be working with Adam's group or somebody in a real estate area that actually knows what these military families are going through when they're buying and selling and moving. And I mean, those are issues that are very, very specific to our military community that I don't think the common buyer or seller has to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. That. And then I think just having like Adam's team, from the agents to the admin, every person has been in the military or has a spouse in the military, so they firsthand know exactly what it feels like to go through that. And the biggest thing that we do as real estate agents often is we're their therapist, and you need someone when you're going through these emotional times to support you through that, and that's what I think someone who's a military member can do as a real estate agent.
Amanda, tell our listeners, before we get you out of here and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, how can they get in contact with you if they might need your help?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are Keller Williams Atlantic Partners Southside, and you can contact us at 904-515-2700, and you can ask for Amanda Trahan, and I can direct you anywhere you need to go.
There we go. Amanda, appreciate you sliding in with us today on a Sunday morning.
Thank you.
Chris, we got more to do. We'll do it on the other side of the break. Stick with us. 104.5 WOKV Jacksonville's News and Talk. We'll be right back. We are back, 104.5 WOKV Jacksonville's News and Talk on a Sunday morning, protecting military families with Chris Brochu, owner of Brochu Law. If you missed any of the first hour, check it out, WOKV.com, or on Chris's website, BrochuLaw.com. You can find a video version of the show thanks to our guy, Justin at Nova Productions, hooking us up with that. All the episodes we've done on Chris's website, you can find them there, and a video version as well. So check that out when you get the opportunity, BrochuLaw.com. Chris, as always, the second opinion. If someone needs your help, if they're just jumping in right here, 7 o'clock this morning on a Sunday, and they might need your help, what is the second opinion, and how can they get in contact with you?
Absolutely, Casey. Second opinion at Brochu Law is, you've got a benefits decision, right? The VA has come back and said, you know what, we're going to deny this, or this is the most you're entitled to, or maybe your VSO says, hey, here are the benefits you're entitled to. You're not entitled to anything more than this, or you have a legal right or a benefits question. We just want to make sure you're not leaving anything on the table. So you go ahead and give us a call, 904-201-1771, or send us an email, kcase@brochulaw.com. What we'll do is we'll set up a time, we'll talk, we'll take a look if we need to at your medical records and denial letters, and we'll figure out, hey, are you leaving any benefits on the table? And if you have any legal claims, what do those look like? And if we decide to work together, at that point in time, we would enter into a fee agreement. We do everything on a contingent fee basis, no fee unless you win. We advance all costs on behalf of military families and civilian families. And remember, if you listen to this show or you are new to this show, if you have any life insurance issues, whether it be under SGLI, Service Member Group Life Insurance, VGLI, Veterans Group Life Insurance, TSGLI, Traumatic Injury Insurance under the SGLI, or any Federal Employee Group Life Insurance, state, term, universal, whatever it is, if your loved one has passed away and you've submitted a beneficiary claim form and a death certificate, and you don't have a check from that insurance company with the proceeds within 30 days, red flag, red flag, red flag. They're either gearing up to deny you, they're unlawfully delaying you, or they may be paying someone else. If you want to see or a second opinion on whether or not that denial is lawful, legitimate, you have questions about contesting a denial, maybe you've got a claim that isn't being paid under a life insurance policy, go ahead and give us a call. Our consultation is always free, and we're happy to speak with you about it.
Absolutely. Give them a call, 904-201-1771, or case@brochulaw.com. We also want to say, if you missed the first segment, just jumping in, go back and listen. But we've spent last week and then the first segment of this week talking about military housing, listing, buying, anything you might need if you're a military family, listing a house, selling a house, buying a house. We had Adam on last week, obviously, and we had Amanda on earlier today. If you need her help, she can help you with anything like that. The number is 904-515-2700, and you can ask for Amanda, and she will help you out. We appreciate her joining us in the first segment. Chris, we let her go and enjoy her Sunday morning, though, and we continue on right here on 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk. We move past real estate now, and we talk about a term I think most people have heard before, and that is whistleblower, whistleblowing, right? All those things. And I think people have heard it in different contexts. I know I've heard it in different contexts.
No referees here, Casey.
There we go. There we go. Let's talk about it a little bit in terms of what you understand it as, right? How you deal with the whistleblower, the whistleblowing situation. Just explain to the people what it is, and then we'll dive deeper into it a little bit.
I think it's a great starting point, and it's an interesting transition from some of the things that we talked about earlier because of the fact that anybody can be a whistleblower, because most people, that especially the ones listening to this show, are former military. They're working with, either contractors or government contractors. They're working with these independent or third-party companies. And a lot of our listeners, they've probably seen fraud, waste, abuse, things that whistleblowers come forward and they talk about. And the main reason why I think it's an important topic for people to understand and for us to talk about today. And again, we're not going to spend a ton of time on it because of the fact that most people understand what blowing the whistle means, right? You're basically telling someone about what your company is doing. But it's important to know, what does the whistleblower get, right? Mm-hmm. Not only could you potentially avoid jail time if you're part of the whistleblowing group, right? Mm-hmm. It's may, it's not you might, right? You may, but you may also get compensation if you find out that some company is ripping off our local government, our state government, our federal government. And what would happen is, if you find a company, a contractor, or a group that's ripping off our government, the entire policy could be or the entire contract could be at issue. So the whistleblower could actually get up to 20% of whatever the recovery is.
That is fascinating. Let's talk about this part of it as well. I think when at least when I think about like whistleblower, right, the first thing that I think of is like, okay, who broke the window as a kid, right? Because it boils down to that at the same thing, like telling who really did it and how are you protected from that, right? So right. I think obviously you talked about some of what can be recovered there. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I think starting with how is somebody in a legal situation, obviously you broke the window, there's probably no protecting you there, but in a legal situation, how is the whistleblower protected?
So it's a great question, and I've got to, before we talk about how the whistleblower is protected, we've got to break one stigma. This isn't about crying wolf. It's not about snitching. It's not about tattletaling. Mm-hmm. These are people that are running companies or working at companies that are stealing money from taxpayers, mm-hmm. right? They've got an obligation under their contract, state, federal, local, to do what they're supposed to do. And instead of doing the right thing, they're pocketing it. So, remind me, it was how...
Yeah. Well, how are you protected?
Right. How are you protected? So, primarily as far as criminal consequences, that's something that you would have to talk to a lawyer about. And that's going to be specific to every case, right? Because if somebody is reading a financial form and realizes that a company is doing something that is unlawful, that's going to be a different situation than if you are working in that finance department, committing some of these criminal acts at the direction of your superior. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing to remember is whenever you have notified your superior, hey, this is off, or, I don't think that this is something that's lawful, or I don't think we should be doing this. Somebody's in harm's way, or, this isn't what we were hired to do, or maybe we're failing to do something that we were hired to do. If the first step that your employer is targeting you is, did they try to terminate you, or did they blackball you and say, you know what, just for speaking up, you're out, or hey, we're going to keep you over here at this desk, pushing paper and all your job duties are taken until we squeeze you hard enough that you just leave on your own. Those are all red flags, right? Because if you're not buying into this unlawful culture, what do? They get you out.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part is maybe, some of the instances I've seen and some of the calls I've got, it's somebody is either in that first scenario, their company is like, hey, you're telling us that we're doing something improper. We're going to punish you because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're in a different scenario where maybe you are doing something that is bad and you just can't get to sleep at night, right? Like people that are like, this is morally wrong. And you see those. You've seen banks get in trouble with it, people that worked at banks. They know of these terrorism organizations laundering money.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are other organizations that are doing stuff that is certainly against our government, right? There are whistleblower claims where, let's say, for instance, I'll give you an example of an easy one.
Please do.
Let's say you had a contractor that was supposed to guard a base, right? Or some installation, and the military gave them a contract, and the contract says you've got to have 20 armed guards, right? At this, guarding this whatever you're guarding.
Mm-hmm.
And the contractor says, yeah, 20 guards, we could probably get away with 12, right? It's not that big. That is fraud, waste, and abuse on the federal government, right? Because the contract says you got to have 20.
Mm-hmm.
But they're only hiring 12. Why? Because they got to keep that. They got to pad those profits. And we're not here, we're not anti-capitalism. I think it's great, right? I mean, there are a lot of great contractors out there that do a lot of good for the government. But what we're trying to do is identify the bad ones, the ones that are stealing from taxpayers and the ones that are ripping off the federal government, state government, local government.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the most important thing to remember when we talk about whistleblower claims is that you could have been retaliated against, right, for speaking up, or maybe it's something that you've noticed and you haven't spoken up about it, but it's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's go back to what you were talking about a little bit just before that with what can be recovered, right? So you, in this scenario, we'll use me because that's fine. Whistleblower situation, I blow the whistle, and something is recovered from the company, and like it turns out my claims are true and all that. And
not WOKV. We'll use a hypothetical.
Absolutely not WOKV.
Yeah, I was gonna say we love WOKV. Definitely not them. Some random other
like
ABC
perfect.
fictitious company.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Definitely not Cox Media Group. You said there's a number, 20% of what was recovered might become yours. Explain to me mostly how that works. Explain to me why the number is 20%. Just overall how that works.
I think based off of the type of claim you have, most of these are filed under seal. And what that means, under seal, is like a fancy legal term that it's not going to be something that is alleged out to the public until there's enough information to realize that there is some potential wrongdoing. And I'll give you an example. Here's a good military example. There was somebody that came forward that says the dual-ended combat earplugs that 3M was producing, between, almost a decade or a little over, they were doing something that was allegedly unlawful, right? That the testing that was done, and again, we'll let the jury shake it out. They've had, I think, 15 jury trials to this point. We've got a lot more service members winning than 3M, but let the courts decide, right? But what they found is, and what 3M ended up paying was $9 million to the federal government because they were allegedly not making what their contract was for. And that's the big argument is, were the dual-ended earplugs in accordance with the government contract? So that's a good example. So what happens is you file this whistleblower claim or somebody comes forward and you investigate it. And there are other ones out there related to chicken manufacturing, right? You've got people skewing the prices of chicken and doing all these anti-competitive things. But once you file it under seal, you're now notifying the federal government too about some of these unlawful practices. And the federal government's going to take a look behind the curtain and figure out, hey, is this something we want to get involved in? And that's called intervener, right? And they're just intervening if they think that it's something that most civilians or some group sector of America is getting taken advantage of, or they think that some company is committing a violation, they'll jump in. So now you've got, if the federal government doesn't jump in, what happens is the whistleblower claim will just move forward on its own, right, as a civil case. But if the federal government jumps in, they'll actually litigate the case, and when they collect on the back end, whatever they collect, the whistleblower would get, depending on the law, as much as 20%. Now, that doesn't include, if that whistleblower has an attorney, which in most cases the attorney will help the investigation and help litigate, and these are extremely complex cases. The whistleblower would obviously, their attorney's fees would come out of the 20%, but, in some cases, there's a $100 million contract on the line. It's rescinded. If they breach one of the covenants, they've essentially breached the whole contract. So you could have a case where, you're in the 7-8 figures and the whistleblower is going to make 20% of that.
Wow. That is fascinating for sure. WOKV 104.5, Jacksonville's news and talk, protecting military families on a Sunday morning with Chris Brochu, owner of Brochu Law. Also, a video version of the show, Justin with Nova Productions hooking us up with that. Find it on Chris's website, on his YouTube as well. If you need his help, case@brochulaw.com. You can email him or give him a call, 904-201-1771. Chris, we continue with the talk about whistleblower and how that situation can play itself out. Let me ask you this. When you go, let's go back towards military families and military service men and women now. How are those people affected by reporting information? Like if a military person is the whistleblower, how do you deal with that often? Is that something you see a lot? And how does that kind of play itself out?
I have seen that, and it's tough because you've got someone that, let's say they're trying to put in their 20, right, to get to retirement, or they are doing a number of things to increase the benefits for their family. They're essentially putting their entire career at risk because maybe their superior who is telling them to do this, right, and they've got to obey them, maybe they now are not going to have the same career if they speak up than if they just fall in line. And the few examples that I've seen deal with that. You've got somebody just turning a blind eye, or someone that is speaking up about a certain policy, and now they're getting shunned. So I think it's important not only to understand that there are people out there that know about fraud, waste, and abuse and why it's so important to do something about it, right? So that you're not letting this go on forever, and that we can extract some of these bad actors and get them out of these contracts so that we can get good companies and good people in place. But also know what your rights are if you have, spoken up and somebody's retaliating against you.
You said it right there, and I know you talked about it a little bit, but if you can, fraud, abuse, what was the second thing?
Waste
and abuse. What does that really mean, if you can?
It just means, you're doing some, fraud would be the same type of fraud that we're talking about. You're claiming that you're doing something, but it's not even remotely close.
Yeah.
The waste would be, you have all of these specs or parts and things that maybe you're supposed to recycle or reuse, and, your contract says X, and you could do it in, 50 million, but it takes you 70 because you have nothing in place and you don't really care about your contract. You're more concerned about lining your own pockets. And the abuse is, what types of things are these companies doing? So I'll give you an example. Some of these companies that are bidding on contracts have gotten in trouble for setting up fictitious companies. So you've got ABC company submitting a claim.
Yeah.
And then they give their secretary and, their spouse and whoever else, they give them these corporate positions at a fictitious shell company that they created. Let's call it XYZ company.
Sure.
An XYZ company who literally probably doesn't even have a checking account, set up. Maybe they do, but it's not a company that could actually do the work that this real company is.
Mm-hmm.
But they're submitting super high bids because they know there are only a few companies that can do it, and that the only company that could actually win the bid, the only actually legitimate company, is going to win every time because the deck is rigged, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got these companies submitting bids that it's not even a legitimate company. There's no competition. It's anti-competitive. So it's that abuse of how can we, again, maybe it's a job that it costs $20 million to do, but with all of these fake bids, this company wins it at $40 million, but it's not really they never really won a real bid because the companies that submitted them, they didn't have any business submitting them. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so just kind of to clarify more with that, those three things are kind of what somebody could whistleblow about. But this is, as far as I understand, I could be wrong, this is not like, I think it was TSGLI where you needed both of of the things to apply. With these three, it's just one. Just abuse could have occurred. You don't need the other two.
Right. Yeah. You can blow the whistle or contact an attorney and tell them all about the unlawful or illegal things that a company's doing, and it may just fall into one of the categories. And again, it's just based off of the law. So, ultimately it comes down to the contract, the agreement. What do the terms say? What does this company? They secured a contract with the federal government for X dollars. What are they required to do to keep that contract in force? And if they're not doing it, then they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that directly impacts our taxpayers, right? Mm-hmm. If you're, in the state of Florida and you have somebody that is, I don't know, contracted to do, you name it, some task around the city, right? Let's say it's some sort of contract work, and they're not doing what they were hired to do, whether it be landscaping, garbage collection, water, sewer, electric. I mean, there's stuff here in Jacksonville right now. We're not gonna talk about it because they haven't had their day in court, but those are the types of issues that people are blowing the whistle about. Things where the only person that these individuals are concerned with are them lining their own pockets. Mm-hmm. And it's hurting our local and state government, federal government, and ultimately that all trickles down to our taxpayers.
Absolutely. I want to ask you this before we get out of here on a Sunday morning, because we are almost out of time, but how often do you receive phone calls about a whistleblower situation? They need your help, because it feels like something that doesn't happen a lot, but now talking about it, I realize that might not be the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when we talk about these military topics, right, you're going to have a lot of veterans that are going to have VA disability questions or claims or appeals and different things. And again, wherever you live, you're submitting that to a regional office. So, you may get a question in Colorado that doesn't occur here in Northeast Florida or somewhere else. And then, you kind of go down the line and you say, okay, military life insurance, SGLI, TSGLI, VGLI, a lot of people have those, right? We've got millions of service members and military families with those questions. You get into some of the whistleblower categories, we don't really know how many people out there know of bad stuff going on.
True.
So the only way that we hear about it is when people come forward and they do the right thing. And again, the incentive to do the right thing is there. You're not getting a pat on the back. I mean, you're getting 20% of whatever they recover, which is ultimately not only doing the right thing, but helping you and your family too. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do I receive them? Yes. Have I received them? Yes. I think people are reluctant. I think people are concerned that they're not going to get the safety and security, that they'll be retaliated against. They don't necessarily know what the monetary value would be if they came forward. But I'm telling you right now, there are people that they may be out there that know that one day the feds might come knocking at their door. You're always better to come forward and stake your position before it gets to that, because at that point,
it's too late.
You don't have as many options. But right now, if you do the right thing, sometimes you can work that out. Again, it's something that you got to talk to your attorney about, something that you got to explore. But ultimately, do the right thing. If you know that your company or somebody at your company is doing the wrong thing and they're taking advantage of our federal government, state government, local government, there's always safety and security, and everything you talk about with an attorney is going to be privileged. So you don't need to worry about somebody going and telling your story. I mean, they're not going to name you.
Sure. Yeah.
Most of the time, the investigation, you're going to be locked away until it gets to that point. So
absolutely. And if you're hearing this right now, you think you might need his help with that, or really anything Chris can help you with, Case, CASE, at brochulaw.com, spelled phonetically is
Bravo, Romeo, Oscar, Charlie, Hotel, Umbrella, brochulaw.com.
And you can find also a video version of this show to see me and Chris in here talking to each other, thanks to our guy Justin with Nova Productions. Also give Chris a call if you're more of a calling person and not an email person, 904-201-1771. That'll do it this week on the program. We appreciate you joining us. As always, we are back next Sunday. Until then, have a great week. Chris, we'll talk to you then.
Thanks, Casey.